Honestly, for me, it's being in nature. I mean, I live in Colorado. That's really easy to do. And also the people I meet when I travel and just making new friendships. Those are things that really fuel me, that are non-negotiables for my own well-being. And, I trademarked a phrase literally for that purpose a few years ago called mental well-being non-negotiables. Not very sexy, but it's mine. So, travel and being in nature are my non negotiables. Like, I have to leave the US and travel internationally at least once a year, or I get twitchy. I need to be in nature at least once a week, or I get twitchy. Those are ways that help me to step outside of myself and to reconnect with the world and the people around me, because otherwise I become like a horse with blinders on and I just get too bogged down. My husband and I and our dog, we love hiking a lot, being out in nature. We have views of the mountains from our back window, which is really
Incredible.
nice. And yeah, just international travel, domestic travel. Put me on a plane, I'm happy.
Welcome to Stress Free SOULutions with Sarah. I'm your host, Sarah Elise, a stress management and fitness coach, advocating the world to trust their gut more often. I discuss various ways to manage stress and share personal stories of guest experts who have gone through the same stressors as all of you at home. Hey there, super moms of the universe. Let's play a game called hide and seek. No, not with your kids or that mysteriously vanishing left sock. It's time to seek out you in the everyday hide and seek of life. Introducing Mastering the Soul System, a 12-week journey to reclaim your time and energy. This course is your gateway to finding balance, energy, and joy in every aspect of your bustling life. Picture this: 12 weeks where the words mom and mayhem don't always go together. Rediscover yourself with every breath in our Soulful Mind Weeks. Sing out loud in the shower or car. Off key is absolutely fine. And dance during our Soulful Body sessions. And embrace the quiet whispers of your heart in our Soulful Spirit adventures. It's about time your spirit got a front row seat, don't you think? Join us on this journey. Embrace the harmony between being a dedicated mom and your personal aspirations. Mastering the soul system, because darling, in the noise, find your silence. And maybe, just maybe, a bit of that elusive thing called me time. You deserve to thrive, not just survive. So come on, slide into our world at www.livewellenhanceyou.com/soul system. Your journey back to you starts now. Melissa Doman is an organizational psychologist, former clinical mental health therapist, and author of Yes, You Can Talk About Mental Health at Work. Here's why and how to do it really well. She's been featured as a subject matter expert speaker at South by Southwest in editorial features for CNN, Vogue, NPR, the BBC, CNBC, Fast Company, Inc., and in LinkedIn's 2022 Top 10 Voices for Mental Health and Big Ideas 2023 list. Melissa works with companies across industries around the globe, including clients like Google, Etsy, the Orlando City Soccer Club, Dow Jones, Microsoft, Estee Lauder, Siemens, Salesforce, Mac, Clinique, Aveda, Janssen, Bumble, and so much more. Melissa has one core goal: to equip companies, individuals, and leaders to have constructive conversations about mental health at work, team dynamics, and communication in the workplace. Her work and book aim to accomplish just that, and I'm so grateful and honored to have her today to discuss all things work wellness, mental health, and of course, travel, because we both have a big passion for that. With further ado, I am so grateful to bring you on, Melissa. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure. I've so been looking forward to this and, gave me an excuse to talk about travel and mental health. Sign me up.
Right? Right? So I am curious, why did you start to tap into mental health specifically at workplace? What were you seeing behind closed doors with your clients when you first started?
It's funny you mentioned that. I used to do clinical work 10 years ago, and gosh, 11 years ago now, and soon to be 12 because we're right around the corner to 2025. I guess that's how time works, right? So I noticed that when I was treating clients clinically, that it felt like I was treating them in a broken system and a broken narrative. And I will never forget when I was in my office one day, kind of staring out the window, and I thought, this isn't actually going to do anything. I'm helping these people to help themselves one by one, small group by small group. Okay, that's all fine and good, but nothing's actually changing because they're not talking to anybody really about what's going on with themselves, except for me and maybe a few select people, certainly not at work.
Right.
And a lot of their workplace cultures were torturing them to begin with. So I thought, let me make an impact at the source. So I switched into very traditional org psych. I still do that work, basically helping people share their toys a bit better in the workplace and not be dicks to each other and try to explain themselves clearly while they do it. But then I noticed that, and this was back in 2016 probably, whenever I would say the words mental health, people would proverbially hiss at me.
Mm.
And I was like, it's not a dirty word. I don't understand why people are still acting this way. And so fast forward to when my husband and I moved to London and I was on traditional people and leadership development contract. And I said, hey, you used to be a therapist. Can you do a mental health awareness campaign? And I was like, oh my God, yes. And normally their internal workshops have 10, 11, 12 people. This one had 75.
Wow.
I went, okay. I think we're stepping on something here. And then it all just kind of took off from there. And ever since probably 2017, 2018, it has just been climbing and climbing and climbing because the market was telling me what it needed. People were telling me what they needed. And fast forward now to when we're recording this episode, and I think the question for me is, how could I not be focusing on mental health in the workplace? Because it is so tough out in the world and so tough within ourselves that instead of pretending like that's going to get better, why not give people the explicit social permission to talk about it and give them the tools to talk to each other about it with the people they spend the most time with each week, their colleagues at
Yeah.
work? End scene. I know that was a very long description, but it all kind of led up to it.
No, it's so important. I've been doing a lot of improvisation work with teams because I want to get people to communicate in a fun way again because they're so often afraid to
Mm,
talk to their coworkers. So, how are you able to go in there with that subject of mental health and get
hmm
people on board, especially, let's say, the leadership team? HR is usually for it, right? They're usually like, yeah, but I got to see what exactly that means for my leadership team.
mm.
Yeah, I'm just curious. How does that conversation go?
Honestly, the way I tend to disarm people by talking about it is with my very well-known potty mouth and just really humanizing myself as a facilitator and consultant and really helping people understand this isn't fluffy nonsense. This is a necessary skill set that everybody needs at some point in their career, regardless of title, tenure, or industry.
Mm,
And this is not an optional thing. This is something that leaders need to learn how to do. HR folks need to do beyond really understanding the law and the ethics. And, to be honest, HR is becoming so people forward and people centric, and they have such a passion for mental health. But it's really helping leaders understand if you're going to manage a team, you have to know how to do this. Period. Not only for how you talk to your team about their mental health, but also how you talk about your own. mental health. So I'm very brass tacks and matter of fact about the whole thing. Instead of going in with this bleeding heart, like mental health matters. It matters. I go, okay, what the fuck are people supposed to do with that?
Right.
What are they supposed to do with it? How do they act on that? So I'm
Mhm.
very action oriented, very solution oriented. And, I'm very much in the real world case and the business case. You either understand the value of this and how it impacts productivity and sickness absence and team communication, individual
Yeah,
well-being, all these things that the data has proven. You either understand the value and you're going to invest in it, or you're going to be left behind the curve. Your choice. So
totally.
I'm kind of a dick about it.
Yeah, but that's smart. And I'm sure because of that, they're willing to make the progress for their team,
Well,
right?
I,
For the
I
most
I'm
part,
yeah,
they
I'm very
want
honest about
someone
it.
that's going to, well, also, like you said, that bleeding heart thing.
It
When
just doesn't help.
it doesn't work, and it also
No,
doesn't connect with team because
no,
already feeling insecure about mental health and things aren't rosy. That
no.
it's just not the case. And that's something I have learned over the years when I was in fitness first. You can talk about fitness and nutrition and self-care all you want and give them a clean presentation, but in the end, if you're not an authentic person, no one's going to listen to you.
Well, yeah, and I basically say we're not trying to create this culture of positivity. We're trying to create a culture of openness and honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And that means sometimes things are going to be bad. Sometimes it means things will be good. But it's good to know how to talk about it so you don't mess up the conversation. That's the goal, is to understand the purpose of the conversation, why it occurs in the workplace, and sometimes when you're not the best person to help them, or someone else is not the best person to help you. So I'm very realistic about the whole spectrum of the conversation that we're trying to create
Yeah.
and the purpose and the intended outcomes. When appropriate, I love using humor because I think that being too serious is not good. Being too, fluffy and ridiculous is not good either.
Right.
So the person you're getting right now on this podcast is the trainer that they get in their businesses, I pity the fool. But I
Well,
haven't lost anybody yet. So,
yeah, exactly. And if you guys didn't listen to the bio, she's working with keynote players that are doing some change, that are doing real change in that mental health space. I have friends that work for Google and they always feel heard, which is awesome. And it's hard though. And I'm curious is like, what are your concerns about where we are with progress on mental health at work?
well, I think that, progress is a slow burn. It's not linear. You take 4 steps forward, 3 steps back. This is not a new thing. My concern is that a lot of organizations have kind of regressed back to old practices now that the pandemic is over. So even though COVID is still around, it's going to be around forever because no one can agree, and this is why we can't have nice things. Because we're now in endemic maintenance status,
Mm,
there are many organizations who go, the shit doesn't matter anymore. And they just went straight back to what they did before.
hmm.
Something else I'm concerned about is I think that the purpose is often getting lost. So I see so much messaging around creating positive cultures of mental health. What that does is unintentionally encourage toxic positivity. So it basically makes people think, okay, if I have nothing positive to share or positive ways to support, I have to keep my mouth shut, where there's going to be consequence. It's not how mental health works, certainly not how stress works, and definitely not how mental illness works.
Right.
So I think that there are these kind of good marketing slogans and quick fixes that seem easy to implement and sound good, like, the brain hacking stuff and anything related to quick fixes and shortcuts or
Yeah.
things that sound or look good. That's not real progress. That's totally fake.
Right.
And so I think there's a difference between implementing something to be seen to be doing it as opposed to implementing something to create change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say those are my two biggest. concerns. Oh, and also that organizations, when they're trying to train up their people leaders to effectively be symptom watchers, that is so unhelpful and unethical and so many uns because they're not therapists, they're not psychiatrists, they're not doctors. It's one thing if you notice that someone doesn't seem like themselves,
Mm.
that's just being socially aware.
Right.
But when some of those programs train people to recognize symptoms of anxiety, depression, I'm like, that is not their effing job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their job. You should teach them how to notice changes in behavior, communication, how someone presents. I just think that there's a lot of people going towards the same goal with different ways of trying to get there, and some of which I really don't approve of.
Yeah. And no, that's being self-aware is so important of your social surroundings. And I've noticed that a lot of leaders are kind of afraid too, because they don't want to, like before, maybe they looked like the leadership, they looked like the CEO. Now they have to play all these certain roles so that everyone's happy all the time. And meanwhile, they're not able to do what they do best.
And what's funny is I actually disagree with that goal. It's not their job to make people
Right.
happy all the time. No one's supposed to be happy all the time. That is not what being human is.
No.
And so that's another thing that I end up talking about is what is a leader's responsibility, what's not their responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and really looking at individual accountability to manage mental health at work, regardless of what's going on. Now, how the work environment affects people, that matters. How the managers contribute to that, how C-suite contributes to that, how the team contributes to that. And people need to be individually responsible to manage their mental health because they're all chronologically aged adults. So if they're working in a toxic environment, if they're able to move on to another place, financially able to move on, that is their responsibility. If
Yeah.
a work environment is telling them what it will not give them and what it won't be.
Mm-hmm. What's the toughest part of what you do?
When people use my services as a checkbox and when they don't like the truth,
Mm-hmm.
that's the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will not conduct my business in any other way.
Right.
So it can be really challenging when I'll lose out on certain contracts because I won't act like a sellout and won't do what sounds good, looks good. There are plenty of times when other people will be chosen because they're willing to do that, and I just won't.
Right.
So sometimes I say goodbye to certain income, and that's okay. And then other times when certain clients will give the impression that they want to create change,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just, use me as a checkbox to be seen to have done it.
So interesting you say that because there is this checkbox of wellness, mental health, but what you do is not necessarily just about wellness. You do so much more.
I would say I'm a professional development provider. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, it impacts wellness. Of course it does. But I would call myself actually a professional development provider.
Yeah. Now, for those that don't know what that might entail, what is it?
So basically, I help people in the workplace to improve tangible skills that they need in their daily work life, whether it's for themselves or how they interact with their colleagues or their team members or the organization as a whole. So I provide education, advising, consulting, events, those sorts of things to help people improve those skills so they can learn how to use them on their own.
Mm.
So I'm very, very skills based. And so professional development encourages people to develop their professional skills so they can develop further as a professional.
Alyssa, what made you decide to develop your brand, your business with your book?
How do you mean?
So What's interesting to me about authors who create these books, like,
Yeah.
you want them to live on, start your legacy towards what you do, or it's just that this was something that was needed because you can't get to every single company by yourself, like you
Mm,
bring it to the masses. So I'm just curious how this book came about. What made you be
got it.
able to do this now?
It's funny you say that. My husband and I were living in the UK at the time, and I had started talking for some pretty big companies and starting to, get some thought leadership notice on LinkedIn and stuff like that. And I remember I was perusing LinkedIn and I saw someone was an author for like a very health and wellness related publisher. And I was like, well, if they could do it, I could do it. And
Mm,
then I thought, I have all these deliverables I'm doing, and I see all this stuff out on the market that is raising awareness about the topic. I don't see anybody writing a book teaching people how to actually have the conversation. Guess it has to be me. So that's really the approach I took is I was like, I think I'm ready to do this, and also there's something that isn't in the market that I need to create. So that's the approach I took, and I gotta tell you, I never anticipated how differently people would start to view me having written a book and having gotten published, not self-published. I completely underestimated how that would impact how people would view my business, my authority, on the topic and those sorts of things. It completely changed everything. And so it really is just a additional credibility tool, and
mhm.
that it reaches people and teaches them these things when I physically can't be there or virtually be there. I mean, gosh, I got my first intern because she had found my book
Wow.
and reached out to me and asked to be my intern. I was like, me? Have an in like, you sure you got the right place? And
Incredible.
then now I ended up hiring her, and she is the lead facilitator for my certification program. People reach out to me from the book all the time who I've never met before, and it's unbelievable from all over the planet. And I also have a just a appreciation for those people for being willing to read the book, not necessarily knowing me, or maybe they learned about my book because they follow me on LinkedIn. But really, the goal was to make it because no one else had yet.
Yeah,
And then it kind of evolved from there.
that's awesome. It is so hard to publish a book too. So I want to say congratulations, get it published.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no one knows what goes into it. You have to do a
Ooh,
book
it's hard.
proposal, you have to have an agent, you have to have a publisher, right? There's so many things. And then you have to market the book, but they, even though they help you, you have to create all these budgets for your book too. So
Hmm.
I just am very impressed by you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
You
Thank
know.
you. It was hard. And let
Mhm.
me tell you, I wouldn't have gotten through it without the support of my husband and my family and my friends because, whoo, I was feeling like such an imposter as I was going through it. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Who's gonna read it? Blah, 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 blah. And I would have freakouts probably like every couple weeks. And my husband's like, calm your shit.
Yep.
You can do this. And I was like,
Yep.
whoa.
Yep. And like you said, you saw something that was missing in the marketplace. And I'm going to repeat that. When things are missing in the marketplace, and my entrepreneur friends that are out there, you need to go and do it now. You can't just wait and sit on it because then someone else will do it.
Oh
And
yeah, 100%.
your voice needed to be heard. So I actually am ordering a copy and I'm going to get your book.
Oh,
Really,
oh,
you
I
know,
appreciate that. I hope for your sake you don't hear my voice yakking at you as you read it. Uh, but
no.
I really hope you enjoy it, and I am excited to hear about your key takeaways.
Yes, 100%. I will reach out after I finish. It's
Great.
just so cool. I just really admire what you're doing for the workplace. I've been with companies now for 4 years, and we need more people out there and being honest, authentic. and just also having fun with them. I think that fun piece is missing when we're connecting with individuals again after the pandemic. So,
Mm.
what's one way that you connect more with the world around you and less with, social media and everything virtual?
So not including social media and virtual.
Correct.
Honestly, for me, it's being in nature. I mean, I live in Colorado. That's really easy to do. And also the people I meet when I travel and just making new friendships, those are things that really fuel me, that are non-negotiables for my own well-being. And it's, I trademarked a phrase literally for that purpose a few years ago called mental well-being non-negotiables. Not very sexy, but it's mine. So, travel and being in nature are my non-negotiables. Like, I have to leave the US and travel internationally at least once a year, or I get twitchy.
Mm,
I need to be in nature at least once a week, or I get twitchy. Those are ways that help me to step outside of myself and to reconnect with the world and the people around me, because otherwise I become like a horse with blinders on and I just get too bogged down. My husband and I and our dog, we love hiking a lot, being out in nature. We have views of the mountains from our back window, which is really
incredible.
nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, just international travel, domestic travel. Put me on a plane, I'm happy. So,
And you
yeah.
also have lived in different areas too. You lived in
Yeah.
Linda, you mentioned, I know DC, now Denver. What has that done, putting yourself in different environments than you
Mm,
were used to, let's say as a kid, and
yeah.
getting out there and connecting with different people?
It's funny you say that. So I've lived abroad in England, Australia, and South Korea. And the first time I lived abroad was study abroad in Australia when I was 19, so it's 20 years ago. Oh my God, 20 years ago. Prior to that, I had no inkling to live abroad at all. I enjoyed travel because my parents love to travel. They still travel. And I was scared to live abroad. I was very scared. And it was on the other side of the planet. And the way I felt when I was living in Australia, it was like this whole new world was open to me. This whole new way of living was open to me. And it felt like by meeting different people, seeing different places, I was able to see myself in a different way, experience my own life in a different way, push myself in different ways
Mm,
that you just don't get access to in your own life and your own comfort zone. And I was very fortunate that I was able to do that through school and financially. Not everybody has access to those sorts of opportunities. And then I remember when I lived in South Korea, that was 4 years later, having lived abroad already in Australia, I was super excited, but I completely underestimated the challenges and the benefits of going through culture shock
mm,
because I didn't speak the language. I didn't recognize anything around me. It was way more challenging but it was good in the end. And, England, obviously they speak English there. Little bit of culture shock. Child of two New Yorkers, as I'm sure you can imagine, with English
yeah.
culture, those kind of clash
Yep.
sometimes. But it just really I may have forgotten your original question. I hope I'm answering it, but it was just really, it just opened up a totally different part of myself that completely changed how I look at the world, how I look at living life, how I look at myself, how I
Mm,
look at what's important. And every time I go abroad, it just recharges me in a way that I can't articulate. It's what I'm supposed to do. And I think that's why one of the motivating reasons that we also moved to Colorado is I'm from the DC area. That is not my bliss. It is not my type of place. I was raised there and there's benefits to that, but every time I came back, I had this like terrible feeling of dread But every time I come back to Colorado, I do this like sigh. I'm like, oh, I'm home.
Yeah.
Feels good to be in Colorado. So
Yeah.
it just kind of showed me what's important in life
Mm.
and how to recreate those feelings stateside in the right place.
Oh, you
I hope I
definitely,
did answer your
I was
question.
like,
I like totally
you
meandered
definitely,
off.
no, you definitely answered it on like that other layer, the connection with other people. Would you say that it took you out of the box and made you more comfortable with meeting more people because you weren't staying stuck in the same environment you were used to?
Actually, I've
Or
been
the
comfortable
opposite?
meeting new people since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for my parents, I was that kid who like would walk up to strangers and be like, "Hey, what's up?" So I've always been that person since I was a kid. My sister calls me the friend collector. And and like the ultimate pen pal, like I'm still in touch with my camp counselor from when I was 10.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
sweet.
So I'm very good at keeping in touch with people. And I'm also like the friendship generator for my husband. So no, I'd say that being abroad just kind of capitalized on those pre-existing personality traits.
Yeah, just built more friends.
Yeah.
You have a big network now. How has stress saved your life?
Ooh, that's a really good question. That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. How has stress saved my life? It has shown me when my body and my brain are screaming for attention and giving me important, necessary warning signs to pay attention to, that if I didn't, my life would look very different.
Hmm.
We have chronic diseases in both sides of our family. You know, heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, like other health issues, mental health issues, like all of these things. And those things cause stress. The idea of them happening causes stress. Being in certain health states that could be right up against those conditions becoming a reality cause stress.
Hmm.
So by feeling stress about those things, it motivates me to manage them differently and to prevent their occurrence. So the most tangible examples I can give you are how I've always struggled with my weight my whole life, and that causes a lot of stress in a whole variety of ways. And I finally got the right treatments for myself. And in the past 6 months, I've lost 48 pounds.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Not done yet, but in a much healthier place. And the amount of stress that's reduced on me mentally and physically is just unbelievable. It's reduced the stress I've had from pain. It's reduced the stress from not feeling comfortable in my own skin. It's reduced the stress of being worried someday that I will develop those diseases like my family has, but because I'll be on this treatment for the rest of my life, short of someone telling me it'll kill me, I just don't have to worry about those things now.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the stress from some of the mental health issues floating around in my family that I was fortunate enough to somewhat develop myself, the stress from that motivated me to cope with it in different ways that, you know, my parents or their parents or our extended family have chosen not to do. But now I feel less stress when I experience those things because I know how to manage it. So, for example, the stress I had throughout my life when my ADHD was not properly managed caused a lot of stress cognitively when I was learning, emotionally, in social relationships. It's because I didn't know how to manage it. And once I got the right treatment, I was able to focus, to start a business, to change my relationships. I also tend to joke that my love language is anxiety. So much so that I got this
I
stuffy
was just gonna say, did you watch that
from
movie yet?
Oh, did I watch that movie? So
Oh,
for those of you who are listening and not watching our video, I'm holding a plushie of anxiety from Inside Out 2.
amazing.
And anxiety causes a lot of stress.
Yep.
So, learn going to therapy, getting the right medication. I'm biased. I have like the best therapist on the planet. I'm obviously a tough customer, as I'm sure you can
Wow.
imagine,
Wow.
having done the job myself. And the stress from my anxiety, and again, just because I used to do the job doesn't mean I'm perfect at managing it myself. But finding the right treatments, the right care providers has really changed the stress I feel from my anxiety. And so all of that discomfort just, I looked it straight in the face and I was like, well, life is going to be miserable unless I figure out how to do this differently.
Mm.
So in those ways, it saved my life emotionally and physically.
Thank you so much for sharing. Since the beginning of the conversation, you've been authentic, you've been funny as hell, and you
Ah,
just shared the realities of mental health and how we can live with our mental health in not a more positive way, but a more real way.
yeah.
And I
Yep.
think that's so important. And it's a great reminder because shit happens.
Hmm.
And we have to figure out how can we move forward? How can we deal
Hmm.
with it in our
Hmm.
own way? But
Hmm.
it's getting that help and the assistance from
Yeah.
people like you, from a therapist.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how can people connect with you?
Well, my website is very difficult. It's melissadoman.com.
Perfect.
And they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. And also on Instagram, my handle is at the Wandering Mel. And also my book is available on, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all major retailers. But if you would like someone to come into your business to make people laugh and curse at them a little bit about mental health, I'm your girl. So feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help.
Thank you again for coming and talking. This has been an awesome interview. Seriously, it's a perfect way to start this February, and I'm so appreciative of your time. And yeah, let's stay connected. I truly mean it. So,
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to talk about some topics that I don't usually get to on podcasts. So it was fun. I really appreciate you having me.
oh my gosh, so much. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. You know what you got to do. You got to share your takeaways. You got to connect with Melissa. And of course, this is always the most important thing. You're going to get a lot of information from this podcast, from your friends and family around you for the week. But remember to be kind to yourself on this self love journey. Take care. Thanks to Dan Lieber at Beckett Brown Music for the intro and outro music. You can keep in touch with me on Instagram at Sarah Elise Coaching. If you're looking to improve your health and wellness, check out my business, livewellenhanceyou.com. While you're there, join the Live Well Enhance You email list and receive exclusive offers for our wellness programs and events. Until next time, take care.